Please raise your hand if you have experience growing mushrooms. Cool.
Yeah.
Right on. Like I said before,
Actually,
not an expert, so if you would like to add a suggestion or you want to even correct me, I'm totally open. Please help me. I would hate to misinform people, but doing what I do and what I'll explain today, I personally had success. And that's what we'll see more in the Monotub technique, is that it's a much more customizable experience. Unlike the PF tech, it's pretty on the dot. If you just follow the recipes, you'll get it done. But when we get to things like the substrate and we go through the recipe, I'm going to list all of the additives because people love to experiment in mixing this up. They switch these around, so it's 2 parts vermiculite and maybe no poop or whatever. And then they add coffee grounds, they add gypsum, they add hydrated lime. I mean, there's so many things that mushroom growers will swear by, that if they don't add at least 1/3 coffee grounds, they're idiots. But everyone's still growing mushrooms, so. So mushrooms are the reproductive structures or fruit of certain fungi. When we talk about mushrooms, we're practically talking about like the flower of this organism. Fungi, it's, yeah, like I said, it's just the fruit. And so I'll walk us through the life cycle here. So most mushrooms have a cap with gills underneath those, all the lines and the things that you see underneath the cap. Those contain the spores. So millions of microscopic reproductive units called spores are discharged from the gills and dispersed by air currents in nature. And then the spores are taken by the wind and hopefully transferred to a attractive environment where they can colonize and form hyphae, which are the lines of mycelium that you saw if you checked out Jason's jar of grain. Just kidding, this isn't Jason's jar, this is just a random jar. Jason's.
Jason's jar.
You mean Mason.
Jason's. I mean Mason's jar, yes. This does not belong to anyone. So yeah, this, as you can see, and you can inspect it, there's these little lines that look like they're jumping in between the ryeberry grains. And so those, you have male and female spores, and those are in our syringe here, but a plastic syringe is not an attractive environment for them to colonize. So they just hang out in there in the water or whatever kind of solution you have them in. And then when you introduce them to something like rye grain, that's when they start colonizing, forming the hyphae, and then you introduce them to more favorable environments like a monotub, and they will start producing primordia. And then those will eventually transform into the fruits of the mushrooms, which is what 98% of the population thinks of when you say mushrooms. That pops up in their mind, which is accurate, kind of. So, I want to talk a little bit about spores, since that's kind of a good place to start this whole process, trying to figure out where to get these. There's a few different websites. I know sporeworks.com is a reliable source. I think it's .com.
Yeah, probably.
.spore. And then also, my favorite one is, I use Reddit, and if you're not familiar with Reddit, it's a social media platform. You have to make an account, and then this R- is how you get to a specific subreddit. And if you go to that subreddit, there's tons of accounts of people that are selling their spores, because spores are legal to buy online. They're totally legal. We use them to study the microscopic organisms, and that's all we use them for, right? That's all we're doing.
Yes,
we're all
sir.
just biologists here, studying
Mycologists.
microscopy. Yes, thank you. Yeah. So that's an important note when you're ordering from anyone on there, and I'll even mention one dude specifically because he's my main guy. But Mushroom Man 666. Pretty silly name, but he's incredibly reliable. If I order spores from him, they're at my house within a week, and they're always.
Is that a U in the beginning?
That's
U?
yeah, it's mushroom.
Oh,
For
oh
user.
no.
Oh
for-
yeah, for user. Yeah. And if you're familiar with Reddit, sorry if I'm not explaining that very well, but yeah, just start messing around with Reddit, and you'll become familiar with all the weird little lingos and all that. But
I looked at that Spore Trader, and I find it really confusing because it was like just hundreds of listings, like one after another, and it was like not sorted or.
It is pretty confusing because it's a social media platform. So there's just this timeline of people posting deals and posting bundles, posting reviews for other people. So what you need to do is click on one person that has identified them as a source by posting a sale or something, or someone left a review for them. Go to their account and then message them. Do not mention that you are going to be using them to grow mushrooms. You don't have to say anything. All you have to say is that I'd like to buy 4 spore syringes of Golden Teachers, or B+, or Amazonian.
Evan, why do you prefer Reddit to Sportworks?
It's just,
Is that just where you started?
it's just where I started.
Oh, okay.
He's super nice.
Okay, gotcha.
Lots of really nice people on there. I use Reddit frequently. And, you just PayPal the person. They all usually accept Bitcoin, Venmo, all that stuff. And, websites, they just freak me out a little tiny bit, but you shouldn't be afraid of using Sportworks. I mean, I've used it before, and it's reliable.
You order over the phone, so like you order online, but then they don't take your credit card information or anything until over the phone.
That's good to know. Yeah.
Yes.
Which service was that?
Sportworks.
Sportworks.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
And mushrooms with an s.com is also a very good place for sports.
Okay, so mushrooms.com.
With an S.
And my friend uses Lil Shop of Spores, like little, like
That's a
L-I-L. Lil
good
Shop
one.
of Spores, like Little Shop of Horrors, but it's L-I-L.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Shop of Spores. And they have like tons.
Sweet. Awesome. Yeah.
I have personally used sporestore.com.
Sporestore.com.
And had a lot of good luck through them.
And I have used some random ones and had my packages seized because they shipped them in from another country. So,
Also good to be aware
what's
of.
on the board, and you've heard like a personal referral from. Because, I mean, it's no big deal. You get like a letter that's like, we seized this and we destroyed it. If you want to contest this, write us back. Otherwise, we consider this a resolved matter. But if you really want to get into it, here's our address. You can contact us
Right.
at the Department of Agriculture.
Do not contact them and say, give me back my spores. You will be
Yeah.
put on a list.
Take that loss.
Yeah, take the loss and go to Reddit or
Price of doing
mushrooms.com,
business.
little shop of spores. Yes,
I assume they're all comfortable dealing in small quantities.
absolutely.
And,
One at a time.
and
One at a time.
just as a price range, what's fair?
Price range, I usually see about $10 a syringe, but I usually try to buy 10 at a time. I mean, they last forever. You get the spores, you stick them in your fridge, and they'll last forever. Just until you need them, until you want to use them.
And that'd be about 100 then?
No, they usually give a deal, so I usually get it for about $60 for 10 of them. Pretty sweet deal. And if you grow your own mushrooms, I'll explain
Yeah,
later
I
in the
can
process,
imagine.
but if you buy one spore print, you shouldn't ever have to buy another one unless you want a different strain of mushrooms. We will go into detail today about how to reuse the spore prints and make your own syringes. So it should last forever as long as you could get it to fruit. That's the hard part, you know. If you fail and you used your whole syringe, you're kind of screwed. So I usually buy a few and I give them away sometimes. So I didn't say that. Yeah.
I ordered the Monotub system from Midwest Grow Kit.
Yeah.
Is that reputable?
Yeah, that is like one of my first encounters ever when I was like 15. I started using their website. But yeah, Midwest Grow Kits, they eliminate the need for you to be here right now because they sell you the whole kit and they give you instructions, and it's expensive, but it's easy as hell. So if you can afford it, go for it. But personally, you can, everything that I'll talk about today, I got from Fred Meyer's or from a local garden supply store, and I maybe spent $70 for all of this. and will produce probably about a half pound of mushrooms. All questions, Frank?
So how many syringes do we need? One or just one, right?
One for one bin should be fine.
For beginners, one is enough.
But for beginners, like I said, I would order 2 or 3 just in case shit hits the fan and it all gets contaminated.
And you'll want to have them. You want to have them.
And you want to have them, yeah. And you want to experiment with different strains. Now let's talk about strains a little bit. For y'all, if this is just starting out, I would highly recommend Golden Teacher. Golden Teacher is the nickname. Psilocybe cubensis is the technical name. But it's generally very forgiving to new growers. It's resistant to contaminations. That's pretty much it. It's just forgiving. You could make mistakes. You could be a little, shifty with your sterilization and all that, and they'll still produce for you. Also, B+, pretty much same thing I just said applies to that strain as well. Yeah. So, any other questions about how you get the spores and which ones you should get? Yes.
So, Paul Stamp had a.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Paul Stamets. No, go for it.
He had a mushroom that he went and foraged with the author of
Michael Pollan.
Yeah. Out in Astoria.
Yes.
Which one is that?
That is Psilocybe
It's very
azurescens.
difficult to grow.
It is almost impossible to grow. I'll say that. Yeah, it is. No one's got it yet, and that's the cool thing about this. We're using the Monotub tech, and like I said before, I've been teaching the PF tech. These are made by people, So, for instance, right now I'm trying to figure out a technique to grow azurescens because there's not a whole lot of people doing this.
It's called azurescens.
Azurescens.
The paralysis strain, right?
What's that?
It causes paralysis.
It's commonly referred to as it is for sure the strongest mushroom known to humankind right now. And after eating them, lots of people report paralysis. Now that can seem scary, but from people I know that have eaten them, it's a good paralysis. That's just kind of like, it's like you don't want to move because it's so awesome.
It's perfect for
I'm
meditation.
gonna add to that because there is a other side to it that is a very scary paralysis.
Absolutely.
And I know it very well, and it's terrifying.
Yeah.
Some people confuse that other paralysis with sort of a couch lock kind of thing, and it's welcome. But I think what some people are talking about when they're talking about paralysis is a real ataxia. It's like it's a weakness of muscles.
Totally,
Yeah.
and it's important to clarify. Be extremely careful with any strain of mushroom when it comes to dosing. That's part of set and setting is measuring your dose, making sure you're in a safe environment so that if you start freaking out like that, you got a buddy there that's there to help you, yada yada.
The syringe, you say one syringe per tub, that's always the way you use it?
No, so the thing is that we're using the syringes to inoculate these jars, and then the jars will be opened up and dispersed through our substrate in the box. So you could technically use one syringe and you can make 100 jars off one syringe from grain to grain transfer. That's when you take one jar that's colonized and then you take one jar that isn't colonized, and obviously you're going to want to do this in an extremely sterile environment, like spray the shit out of the room with Lysol. I also have an alternative. Lysol, you're definitely going to want to write down because you're going to want to use wait, before you write it down. Sorry, hold on. I did some research and found an alternative that isn't as harmful as Lysol to maybe you or your kid's health or to the environment. Vinegar, hydrogen peroxide, rubbing alcohol works just the same. If you could make that concoction and put it in a spray bottle, vinegar, hydrogen peroxide, and rubbing alcohol. Get those things.
Equal
probably.
Parts.
What's that?
Equal parts of the 3?
Yeah, 3 equal parts.
10% bleach solution.
10% bleach, yeah, but I generally don't like to use bleach. But whatever works for you, use Lysol. I don't, do what you gotta do. But you're
so that's 30%, 33% off. One third all the way across on that?
Yeah. Okay. And experiment with it. I even put essential oils in that mixture. I put peppermint, just because the smell is kind of gross, so it makes it smell better and all that. But like I said, you're gonna want it to be extremely sterile. when you want to do the grain-to-grain transfer. We'll talk about that more when we get through the inoculation. So, any more questions about strains or
I had a
spore
question on
sourcing?
the strains. The third one that you mentioned, the azurescence. Was that paralysis due on a particular dosage amount, or is it that just the nature of that strain?
I'm sure it's dosage. I mean,
dependent, but it
yeah,
can
I'm
happen at
sure
low
if you take a
doses,
small
too.
amount of the mushroom, you'll probably just feel.
Don't start with those.
Yeah.
Is it similar to the high doses of Almedas, that kind of?
I don't have experience with either of them, but I'm probably going to say no because I've never heard that connection being made before. And Amanita muscaria, which if anyone's familiar, is the mushroom that has the red cap and all the white warts on it, grows all over the place. Beautiful mushroom, and you can eat it and experience psychedelic trip.
It's not psilocybin.
You have to boil it
It's not
first.
psilocybin. You have to peel the skin, boil it, and make it into tea, and then drink it. I don't recommend it. I've heard many bad stories about the mushroom. I've heard a few good ones, just like I've heard a few azurescent stories that were good. But, like I said, proceed with your own caution. I'm not your psilocybin coach up here. Just teaching you how to grow it. That's all. Yeah, we're going to talk about sterilizing your jars. And like I said, I want to thank John for bringing this bag. He brought a bag of rye grain. I'm not sure exactly how we would divvy that up, but he brought
There's a bag of
bags too.
Ziplocs.
Right, but you're gonna. I mean, I would also recommend you just go buy a bag. It's $25. Bob's Red Mill, like the mill, is in Milwaukee, Oregon. I don't know if there's people here that don't know that, but that's pretty cool. I mean, that's an awesome company. And you go there, and there's cashiers right by the door. You have to tell them you want a giant bag of rye grain, and then they will go into the back of the store and they'll bring it out for you. But $25 for this much rye grain is a steal, and I highly recommend you go there.
Under 20?
What's that?
Under 20.
With a coupon.
Well, actually, it's almost 30, but I have Chinook book, so it's $10 off. So
Get the Chinook book too.
Just under 20.
Oh,
Great
gotcha.
book.
Yeah.
Sweet. Thanks again, John. Yeah, and that's what I use. My bag's right there with all my grain. And so, any mason jar will work. Previously, I mentioned PF Tech method has to be wide mouth because you take the grain and you pop it into the fruiting chamber. But for the monotub, it doesn't matter. You're going to take this, and it doesn't matter how loose it is. You're just going to mix it in, so it can have a narrow mouth to the jar. Okay. I generally like to use larger jars just because.
Bigger is better.
Yeah, bigger is better. You know.
It's easier to clean them.
And it is easier. So, you are going to take your pressure cooker. This one.
Can we talk about preparing the rye?
Oh yeah. So, you take your rye, get a big bowl, dump however much you want to fill up. I usually do 4 or 5 jars at a time, so I fill up like a decent sized kitchen bowl. I forgot to bring it, but I fill that up with the rye grain, and then I pour water in there so that it's just above the rye grain, and I let that sit on my kitchen counter overnight. You want to soak that so that the berries are hydrated.
Does it need to be sterile at that point?
Nope, doesn't need to be sterile.
Okay.
You don't have to wear gloves or spray Lysol or any of that shit because it's about to go into the pressure cooker, and then from there on it'll be ready to go. Yeah.
So you barely cover the rye grains, and the
You
water.
cover it like half inch of water.
And the water is completely absorbed. So.
The water will be completely absorbed by the next morning, and then you want to make sure you use it immediately because if you let that sit, the berries are going to start to sprout, and then you're going to have sprouted berries, which are really good. But it's not what we're going for here.
Ryegrass.
Anyway, use the leftover berries and make some sprouted, whatever.
Don't
So-
add water, just dry, wet berries is what you add.
Yes. So, and then you want to take a spoon and get those. You don't want to dump into jars or anything because you don't want like actual liquid like in the jars. You just want the berries. So, after that happens,
I boiled mine after I soaked them the next day. I boiled them for maybe about 10 minutes, and then I dumped off that excess water, and then the steam kind of cleared the moisture off the surface of the rye for me, so it was like maybe mine was on a little of the dry side, but it's doing well. So, you know.
Yep. Thanks, Jason.
Yeah.
So you use cooked berries and you use uncooked berries.
You're putting them in the pressure cooker in the mason jars, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So,
I wonder what
you got this jar. It's full of berries. It could be more full than this. It can go up to the mouth. And then you want to take a piece of tin foil and cover it. You don't want the cap on for this stage because no moisture is going to be able to get through to help sterilize because these are airtight, so it's not going to work. So I usually put them back on like this. You don't have to put them all the way, but just like that. And there's tin foil, and then the steam will go up under and then sterilize the berries. So we're sterilizing now, and then we'll be pasteurizing the substrate later. So this is an important distinction to make, is that we are killing almost all of the bacteria when we sterilize with the pressure cooker. And when we pasteurize the substrate, where it's lower heat for longer time so that some of the bacteria is still alive because it's good for the mushrooms. They enjoy the nutrients and all that. So 5 or 6 of these, maybe just one. Wouldn't make sense to do just one though. If you're cooking them at one night, you might as well do 6. Take them. You're also going to want, we generally use the rings. Layer them on the bottom. You could also use like a cake pan or something, but you just don't want the jars to touch the bottom because they'll crack and explode. Similar to what we'll be using with the pillowcase because it'll burn to the bottom of the pan. Sweet. So you'll stack those up.
The foil's not punctured or perforated, right?
Nope.
Okay.
Yep, just covered and then put in place on there. Stack those up there. However you see fit. Oh, and you want to fill it with water, and you want the water to just come up right above the lip.
That wasn't your foot.
No, I'm good. No, I'm good. Right above the lip. So you want the water to just come up right there. So maybe a half inch above the jar. That's how much water should be in your pressure cooker.
Is there a reason for that you know of?
Yeah, so that there's steam.
Enough water? I mean,
Enough
okay.
water for steam.
I'm sure you have that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's vital too. If you try sterilizing with no water in there, you are going to make it explode.
But the mistake would be in putting, it wouldn't be a mistake in putting too much water in as much, so
No.
it's putting too less.
No.
Okay.
Well, I mean, it's going to be boiling in there too. How much of that? I don't know.
You just don't want. Yeah, I mean, half inch. I won't go into it more. Just put a half inch of water in there. Half inch above. Yeah.
Water's
above the lip.
so
So.
Is it possible to do this without a pressure cooker with just a big canning?
Yeah, as long as you can get it to.
Canning's the same process.
Yeah, it's pretty similar. You just want it to steam and get so hot. I mean, some people just use a pot with the lid. You can get it to around 200 degrees and let it sit there for an hour. You're probably fine. But pressure cookers, I like because it instills confidence, and pots done. So it doesn't have to be on, whatever. So pop it on. Make sure you pull it closed, and then there's usually a little rocker that's on here.
On the floor somewhere.
I'm sure you all have experience with pressure cookers. So you want to make sure it gets to 15 psi. That's the sweet spot. 15 psi. You should have a little gauge on your pressure cooker. If you don't, you can get them on Amazon, hook them up. And then you want it to sit there at 15 psi for 1 hour. And then after that hour's up, it'll start steaming. And then you want to turn the stove off, and then take it off, and then go to bed.
Oh.
Do you do the natural release method where it comes in naturally, or do you put do the quick release with cold water on the pressure cooker?
No, I let it
You just let it
naturally
go.
cool
Natural.
off. That's
Okay.
why I said go to bed. Do this at night, and then in the morning you wake up and you have sterilized jars.
Gotcha.
Obviously turn off the stove.
So obviously you're cooking the rye berries too, just like he cooks the rye berries, except he cooks
You're not
before.
cooking them. You're sterilizing them.
Well,
I don't know that my process is cooking.
They get extremely hot. Yes.
Have you ever heard of anybody using an Instapot with these? Because you can't really.
I have tried, and they work, but you have to do it for much, much longer. And I've had a lot of experience with contamination when I had to use an Instapot or, like rice cooker type thing. And I probably chalk it up to the fact that the rice cooker or the Instapot doesn't get hot enough. It just doesn't reach 15 psi.
Okay.
Is there generally a heat setting, like low, medium, or high, that you keep it at to maintain that 15? Or is it specific to, I know there's a lot of variations.
Yeah, totally. Lots of variations. Just experiment with your own stove. Mine's usually on medium. Yeah.
Mine's on like the dead lowest once I get to 15.
Oh, right. When it gets to 15, just
okay,
set it so that it can remain stable and it doesn't keep increasing.
I have had luck with an Instant Pot, but you have to use the quart jars instead of the pint jars.
It's usually the case too. They're pretty small.
They're pretty short. You can get bigger jars than those.
Sweet. So it's the next morning. We wake up. It's like Christmas. We take it off, and we have our sterilized jars. Now, I don't think I brought them. No, but pretend I'm putting on gloves, and I've recently showered. My hair's back with the scrunchie, and I'm being very cautious of everything that I'm doing now. I've cleaned the kitchen counter with my cleaner liquid or whatever, and like I said, practicing caution, because now we have sterilized jars that are ready to go. But you have to realize that in the environment there's just bacteria in this room right now. There's so much bacteria that's just floating around in the air, and so you just have to be cautious of that.
Would you recommend saging? Because a lot of times sage gets rid of like bacteria in the air.
I didn't know that.
Burning sage.
Huh.
Yeah,
Think about burning some sage. Smell really good too. So we've got these jars, and so I use lids that have self-healing injection ports in them. Mm-hmm. You can get them on Amazon. You can get a big pack of them for like $5. They're like 30 cents a port. And so it's this little silicone piece that you can pop into the lid. You take a nail or whatever you want, you pop a hole into it, then you squeeze the injection port into it, and then that will allow you to inject the syringe and then remove it without being worried about contaminants going in after. Because what I've also had to do is just do this and then inject a little bit and then immediately take micropore tape, which is another important thing that you'll want to write down as far as supplies that you'll need. Micropore tape is important for closing off lots of areas. We're going to take it and put it on the holes here around the monotub later, because the mushrooms, they're like humans, they need to breathe oxygen, very small amounts. So, there's not a lot getting in through the micropore tape. Also, sports tape, you get it from any pharmacy, it'll all work. Tyvek is also a good option to use.
Can I ask the name of that thin piece that you use on the top of that?
Self-healing injection port. Okay. And that's you're getting into more advanced methods if you're buying equipment to transform your jars instead of just using this, but it's better safe than sorry.
At this point, have you already sterilized your container?
No.
No. Okay.
If you're using a self-healing injection port rather than foil, then you just use the solid top in the pressure cooker?
No.
Okay.
You'll still replace it with the lid after, and then inject. So, we're going to talk about how much of the spores you want to inject. It's going to be like this when you get it in the mail. It's full of the stuff, and I'll just
So are you sterilizing that lid with the port in it then? Or whatever you put, are you sterilizing the lid somewhere, are you boiling those?
You've done all this sterilizing and you just pop that lid on. That lid's not sterile, is it?
No, the lid, So I usually stack the lids in there with it, and yeah, the self-healing injection port can be sterilized, and you'll want to sterilize it for sure. So place other hardware around it, and then yeah, at the end, when it comes out, you'll just take it, pop the sterilized lid on,
lowers the window,
and then pop it on.
So you can put the self-healing injection port on before the sterilization?
Yes,
and
you'll want to do, yeah.
Oh, not after? Which
Not
I
after.
think
that's instead of the
Yeah,
1040.
sorry, and I should have mentioned that before. I just got distracted because this one doesn't have one. So anyways, you got your spores here, okay? I'll try to push the air out.
15 cents each from Micro Supply.
Thanks, Joel. So now we have our sterilized jars. Injection port or not an injection port. Like I said, you can take a hammer and a nail, and before you sterilize, pop holes into the lid, and then cover those with micropore tape after the fact that you sterilize. This will be full. They usually come all the way full, 10 cc's when you buy them online. And so you'll take it, and whatever port you're entering, you'll want to, I usually do 4. So I do a 0.5 milliliter per side of the jar. So you want to stick it in and angle it so that it hits the side, hits the glass, and then put in a 0.5 milliliter, and then a 0.5 milliliter, 0.5 milliliter, 0.5 milliliter. That's a little much. You could do 0.5 milliliter for the whole thing. Just be aware it's going to take a while to colonize. I like it to go a little bit faster, so I add 2 milliliters dispersed around the whole thing. Also, you want to make sure it hits the side so that you can observe it easily, because what's going to happen is that on the side of the jar, didn't happen with this one because it was a grain-to-grain transfer, but there's going to be this beautiful point where the needle hit. This is the jar. And the hyphae that's here in the mushroom cycle are going to start dispensing, because remember, your spores are full of male and female microorganisms, and they are going to, once introduced into an environment that is suitable for them, have a bunch of sex and then produce a ton of hyphae. It's just going to be a huge mushroom mycelium orgy in your little jar, and it looks like this. We're all experiencing it.
So the syringe isn't going down into the berries, it's above the berries on the side
No,
of the
it's going in
glass.
down into the berries.
It is
These
down
are
into the
not
berries.
full to where they probably should be.
A sterilized syringe.
A sterilized syringe. Sorry, that's another thing. I didn't bring a lighter either. But before every time you go into the jar, you're going to want to flame sterilize the needle. And some people even get a Bunsen burner.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but it's, it uses a different type of fuel so that you're not getting a bunch of butane from, say, a Bic all over your needle. I usually have some Clorox wipes, and I will flame sterilize, wipe it with the Clorox wipe, and then inject into the jar.
Make sure the syringe gets very cool again.
Yes, you will burn the spores if it has not been cooled. So if you're not using the Clorox wipe, let it cool for 10, 15 seconds, and then inject. Thank you. So, now we have this jar. It has been injected with about 2 milliliters of spores and is ready to be stored for the colonization period. You're going to want to store these in a place that's about 70, 75 degrees. And I know that's pretty warm, so that's why you're going to want it to designate a closet, a bathroom, somewhere where there's not a lot of airflow constantly, there's not a lot of traffic. A closet in your main hallway of your house is probably a bad idea, because there's tons of people, tons of bacteria walking through all the time. So go upstairs, find a closet, go downstairs in the bathroom or something, and put a space heater in there if you have to, so make sure that it maintains 70, 75 degrees.
I also use a seed mat, and I actually put the non-clear tub where the jars go into, and I put them on little tiny risers, and then I put a seed, it's a seed sprouting mat. You can get them at the hardware store, and it does rise up just enough that keeps it pretty nice.
It's a good idea, I haven't had too great of success with the mats because you got to think you're heating it from one side and one side only. If you're doing what you said and you create a little microclimate in here so that the heat gets dispersed around, it's better. But I generally suggest that the whole area surrounding it is just is a constant temperature. But if you have to, say you can't heat up a whole little room, I understand electricity is expensive. That's a good place to start. I have heard success.
How big is the closet?
Yeah.
How big you said closet was?
How big?
Depends
on your house.
It's just the ambient temperature.
Okay.
Yeah.
How hot is this?
Base.
Yeah.
72 degrees.
Between 70 and 75 degrees. Sometimes it can get closer. What's that?
Is humidity an issue at all, or?
No, at this stage, humidity shouldn't be an issue.
Okay.
Yeah, one thing that confuses me is you're using the polyfill right now, but you talked about using the breathable tape. At this stage, should be using breathable tape.
Same
and
thing.
polyfill.
It's the same exact thing. You just want.
One better.
I generally use the tape, just because this is a little messy.
And
but
the tape comes on before you sterilize. That's the tape,
Yes.
right? Okay.
Yeah. And yeah, so I mean, like you could see, it's a little tiny bit messy. I generally prefer the tape, as you could see here. So these have been injected. These failed. They're contaminated. I'll be passing them around so you can observe the colors and all that.
So the heat of the sterilization won't affect the adhesive in the tape?
No.
Okay.
Okay, so these are in the spot colonizing, okay? You'll want to check on them probably daily, once a day. You want to be gentle with handling them because the mycelia is very fragile. You could bruise it, and also be aware, you should be washing your hands. Could go as far as to use gloves every time you touch them, but that's a waste of plastic. Just wash your hands real well, and then maybe spray the closet with your home spray or with your Lysol, and then go inside of it and handle them. Check on the hyphae, see how it's looking. Also, another important thing I forgot to mention is that after you inoculate, get a Sharpie, just mark the date and the species. It's good to be organized when it comes to all of this. It's good to keep track of what you're doing and when you're doing it and which jars are from what day that you inoculated. Cool.
Leave the jars.
So that is, it varies. Okay, it varies in the temperature. It varies on how much you put inside of it. It varies on if you're using rye grain. Some people use popcorn kernels, as you can see. No, it is this one. There's popcorn kernels in there that's been used to transfer the mycelium. The popcorn kernels don't have as much nutrients as the rye grain does, so rye grain will grow them faster. But generally, it's going to take 2 to 3 weeks. 2 to 3 weeks is how long it should take. Now, when it gets to, I'd say this is pretty decent stage. It's about 50% colonized. I like to shake them, give them a hard shake. We had a bicycle tire installed next to the wall in our basement laboratory. You take it, and you just tap it a few times on each side. Now this shakes it up, and it'll look like all the mycelium disappears, but it didn't. It's still there. And what you're doing?
Go for it.
Yeah. So we're shaking it up. I probably shouldn't because it's a good one to show people, but it looks like it's almost gone now. It looks like it looks,
It does.
Yeah, shit, we're gonna have to keep track of these.
It's all good.
Is this one inoculated?
No.
No? Okay, let me just mark. This one is marked, we're good. So this one, now it usually gets to 50% in my case in about a week, maybe a little bit longer. And then at 50%, what you're doing is you're putting the mycelium through a bit of stress so that it can get stronger. It comes back and will colonize the rest of the grain, and It's survived its earthquake trauma, and now it can push forward and continue to colonize with increased motivation. So what will happen?
So, Evan, so you spoke about not bruising it earlier and being careful. So the point is to wait until it's 50% established.
Yeah.
And then do it.
Yes.
Okay. So it's
Yeah,
important to get a good
because
solid-
if it's just like this and you're shaking it and it gets bruised, I mean, it's gonna pause the growth and all that. So this one is super dry, but unfortunately, it's my only other example to show since I just shook that one.
What do
all
you got
over.
down here?
Hey, there we go. Never mind. I got a really good example right
There
here.
you go.
So
Oh, yeah.
this is what it should look like after it comes back. Even this one's a little bit dry.
So is that what
but-
you call 100%?
No, because you can still see that there's
okay.
still berries, but it's dried out. Unfortunately, I'm not growing at my house now. It's an older house, not sterile enough. I don't even feel like risking it. It'd be a waste of time. So this one is from the laboratory that Matt and O'Brien and I had at his house before he died. So we have, it's starting to dry out, and also this is dried out. There's no more growth happening. Even if I shook it up, it probably wouldn't come back. But it's paused at this really beneficial growth. So I'll pass this around and everyone can check it out.
So
and just-
that's good, even
that
though
is-
it's dry.
It's look towards the middle of the jar. That's perfect mycelium. Towards the bottom, it's a little dry, but that's not bad. You know, you could still use it. You'll just have to kind of crush it up more and disperse it.
So that would be like 2 weeks into it?
Yeah, I mean that was.
That would be a very nice 2 weeks.
Yeah, that would be pretty beautiful. This is probably closer to 3.
So 3 weeks after shaking, or 3 weeks?
No, 3 weeks since
Total.
you inoculated.
Okay.
Yeah, you're probably shaking around a week and a half. And so, yeah, we have this beautiful, fluffy white jar, and it looks great. And now what we're going to do is we're going to start preparing the monotub so that we could take the jar and the grain and disperse it in here. So grayish blue, greenish blue, in areas in your jar, that is a contaminant known as trichodermia. And there's tons of different contaminants, but this one is the most common, and it's caused by lack of sterilization. So when that happens, do not open it up. Do not expose the rest of your house, the rest of your jars to that contaminant. Take that jar. Sometimes people will, just try to see if anything happens and they put it in their backyard or something. That generally doesn't work. Just throw the whole thing away. Just toss the whole thing, get rid of it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
These are tropical species.
Yeah.
So
It's not going to work. Maybe in the summer you'll get mycelial growth, but generally it won't happen. So, if you see trichodermia, get rid of it as quickly as possible. This is also why we're checking every day. It's okay if you can't check every day. Say you're out of town for a few days. It'll continue to colonize, and remember there are microclimates inside these jars, so hopefully the contaminants don't spread jar to jar, but you want to be there when it does and you want to get rid of it when it does.
And that's why you do extra ones.
And that's why you do 6, yeah, exactly. Now we're going to go into making the substrate. I'm gonna erase this silly jar. We're good? Oh yeah. Just had to use the restroom. Cool. So this is going to be the environment that our mushroom is going to be, or our mycelium is going to be attracted to. We are creating the perfect environment for it to go and get the nutrients that it needs, and it's hungry. It's so hungry. It wants to escape the jar. It wants to get out. It wants to colonize more of its environment, and we're gonna let it do that in our monotub. So what you want to do is you want to take a tub. This is bigger than what I usually use, and so I apologize, but I'm going to be experimenting a little bit with how much it's going to take to fill this guy up. I usually use one that's about half this size, but the holes are on point. You're going to want to make, two holes on each side for the longer sides, and 1 hole on the other side, and then you can either take polyfill and stuff those. I'm just going to take my micropore tape, and I'm going to tape over those holes.
How many quarts is that one?
This is 54 quarts.
Oh, that's what it was.
I mean, it's a decent size. You're gonna get a lot of mushrooms if this is the size you wanna go.
What would that box usually yield?
This box, you have to also remember you're going to get multiple flushes per grow. And what that means is that after you get a bunch of mushrooms and then you harvest all of them, you can soak the huge brick that's at the bottom of
That's
this.
the mycelium base.
Yeah, it'll pop out. Like the mycelium is colonized. It's just how if this was a wider mouth in the jar, we could pop this thing out and it would.
How worried are we about contamination at this point?
Extremely.
Yes.
Extremely worried. Because there's tons of bacteria flying everywhere. We're moving around. We're opening up jars. We're opening boxes. So you're going to go through a couple cans of Lysol at this stage. You're going to want to make sure you're washing your hands frequently. I even use gloves at certain points.
And you've Lysol'd out this whole thing too.
So yeah, take your Lysol or take your home spray, and you're going to want to spray this whole thing and wipe it down. I generally use isopropyl alcohol when it comes to this point. So
if you're using a smaller tub, you still do the same amount of holes.
yes, and my holes are generally smaller too. These are pretty.
And you're spraying the black part of the bag, I think.
No.
No,
So the
you're
bag.
not.
Sorry, it's not in there yet.
Oh.
Yeah. So
Okay.
it's just this empty tub.
What bag? The holes are just for airflow. You could have smaller holes and more of them, or bigger holes. You
But
just wanna
generally,
make sure air can get.
if you're using the polyfill, which is the pillow stuff that was hanging out of one of the jars, you'll want bigger holes. Just so you can fill more of it, and then the tape it'll cover easy. It does not need that much oxygen. It needs very small amount, so don't feel like it needs to be taking these huge giant breaths. You're gonna spray it. You're gonna wipe it. You have a nice clean tub. You're gonna spray the lid, and you're gonna wipe the entire lid, top and bottom of it. Wipe the outside of it, and seriously wipe everything. You're gonna want to take a clean trash bag out of the fresh, unopened box, and spread it out. And you're going to want to layer this on the bottom of your tub, just so it creates kind of a little tray.
And you're wearing gloves at this point too.
Wearing gloves, imaginary gloves on my hands right now. And so what this is doing is protecting the mycelium because you don't want it exposed to light yet. You want it to be dark. And so this box is going to go into that closet that's being maintained at 75 degrees. And it's going to continue to colonize there. Maybe with more jars. I don't know. Maybe you're just cycling it out. So I usually do. So this is going in there. And now we are going to create the substrate that is going to enter this. So
Could the bag be on the outside to protect it so you didn't have to worry?
it could.
It's easier to clean.
It's easier to clean if it's on the inside, and also it also helps if you're gonna do flushes to kind of have something to grab onto to kind of like open up the mycelium so that you can take the brick out and then soak.
Do you need to wipe it down, or do you think taking it out of the box in your clean environment with your clean hands and your clean body is gonna have to be enough?
It's gonna have to be enough.
Okay.
Yeah, and also take every precaution you feel necessary, but as you get more into the hobby and you have your first successful flushes and you start growing, you'll start to realize that you don't have to be so meticulous with your sterilization work. Like I said, the golden teachers, they're very forgiving strain of mushrooms. Yeah.
Doesn't the plastic bag also keep pins from showing up on the sides and the bottom?
Yeah, it directs. So the mycelium will want to open up wherever it feels the air and wherever it feels the light. So by putting the plastic bag around, you are concentrating all of the fruit to come up on top, which will be very easy for harvesting, and you won't get those annoying little pins that are starting. You probably still will around the side, but it'll be very small ones, and they won't be on the bottom.
So there isn't actually a brick size object.
No.
It's as big
Break it
as,
up.
It's as big as the bottom of that.
Yeah, it's just this large pan.
That's the
like
size
thing.
of the brick.
It depends on your box. Mine is usually, like I said, it's smaller, so it is more brick-like. But any more questions?
I didn't hear. Did you say that you sterilize the bag before you put it in?
No, you're not going to sterilize the bag. I mean, just take it out of a clean container.
Okay.
There's not a whole lot of bacteria in a fresh box of garbage bags, thankfully. So it should be fine.
So Evan, then the only side that's exposed to light is the top. I mean, and that's only when you open the closet.
Right.
Or are you going to find a way to also prevent that light, or do you want that light because that encourages
You don't
growth on the
want
top?
any light while it's colonizing.
Okay, so not even on the top. Okay.
Right. So what I usually do is when I mix the grain and mix the spawn and the substrate, I take another garbage bag, I open it up all the way, and then I wrap it around the whole thing. And I tie it off. So now I have this box. And like I said, mine's smaller. I don't know, you're gonna need a huge bag. And so it's completely covered with black plastic. You can cut one and just wrap it around this one if you needed to. Yes.
So, do you know if it's better to use the dark bags or can white bags work?
I highly suggest dark bags.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The light.
Any other questions before we make the substrate?
And all those holes are covered up completely?
Yes. And I can do that.
I have
It's
one more
okay.
concern just about the
There's
side
no
pinning,
ventilation at
'cause
all at this point.
No.
Because I know that's a problem.
Except
So
that's my
if
forte.
all things are equal now, how is it that you can avoid the side pinning? Because now if you are having dark on every side, then
Because
every
when
side's
we do
equal, so-
fruit,
yeah.
when the whole thing is colonized and we induce fruiting, we will introduce it to light, and then there will be light hitting the top.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks
because
for
colonizing, we want it to be all dark, and if it's all dark, it's not going to start pinning.
Right. Sure. Okay. Thank you.
No problem. So I'll do this just so people don't get confused that I'm
The very first fruits. The very
leaving
Evan,
holes.
I had a question.
Sure.
After the first flush, is it more resistant to contamination?
No.
It's the same vulnerability levels?
It's not. It will be more prone to contaminants as you flush.
Oh.
You're introducing more moisture, and you're taking it out, and you're handling it, and the mycelium is getting tired. It's like, holy shit, dude, I've already produced a half pound. How much do you want from me? Leave me alone. And you're like, no, more, and you keep doing flushes. So by the time you get to fourth or fifth flush, it's going to get contaminated no matter what.
Okay, becomes weaker over the course
Yeah,
of
so
time.
I generally just give it a break, and I stop after 3.
All right.
And then I call it quits after there because I don't want contaminants at all in my space. You know, so if you push it to the limit and you get to 5 or 6, then it gets contaminated. Well, good job, you have a lot of mushrooms, but now you have a place that's been introduced to contaminants. To be fair, that will probably happen anyways, but if you can avoid it, try your best.
Can you explain the flushing again? What is that? Is that just moving it around?
I can explain that more when we get to the harvesting at the end.
Oh.
I just want to try to keep everything in order so that we don't get lost or confused here.
And that's a breathable tape, is that right?
This is the breathable micropore sports tape.
Once the garbage bag goes over it, it's not gonna be breathable.
No, it'll still get air.
Okay.
Yeah. It'll still be able to extract.
Is there another name for that micropore tape? It's called Meditape, like medical tape?
Micropore tape.
Okay.
It'll say it on the packaging.
Okay.
It might have a brand name, but
Okay.
cool. So, how's everyone doing? We're with me. We're good.
Yeah.
No one's lagging. We're on top. Sweet. Cool.
Now we're gonna make the substrate.
Yes, so now we're going to make the substrate. We're going to make the food. We're going to make the nutrients for our grain to enter our little microenvironment. We're creating the environment inside the tub. So, the recipe is 2 parts poop, and I do want to clarify, this is poop from a cow or poop from a horse.
Okay.
Oh boy.
Or in stores, it might say dairy or steer, which is weird and pointless.
Is it a Fred Meyer?
No. I just stopped there before because I was trying to pick some up, and they're out for the season. They don't carry. So I also wanted to suggest, as far as resource goes, in Southeast Portland, there is Naomi's farm supply store.
It's organic.
It's organic, it's cheap, it's affordable, it's in mass quantities. I got this giant bag of cocoa core for like $8. She's got everything you'll need to grow mushrooms. So, we got our recipe. I would also like to clarify, this is my recipe. It's not my recipe, but this is what I use, and this is what works for me. There's so many recipes online. It is almost overwhelming how many variations of this people suggest. Some people suggest no poop. Some people suggest no vermiculite. Some people suggest no core. Some people hate, each individual ingredient. But it just depends on your house, on your strain, on your whatever. Okay, it's like I said, the Monotub, it's slightly more advanced. You're gonna find your own way of tweaking this system so that it works for you and that you get the flushes that you want. And this is how I've done it in our basement laboratory for the past year, and it's worked out pretty all right. So, I'm gonna start with the poop.
Organic.
So don't look at the bag. Like I said, Fred Meyer's was out of their horse compost, and Naomi's was today, but they're usually not. I told them I was teaching a class today, and I wanted to recommend their store, and they said, tell them to come back tomorrow. So if you want to go to Naomi's, they'll have the horse and the dairy manure for you, but they didn't for me today. So I'm using compost. It looks the same. You'll be able to recognize it, but the bag says compost. Just pretend I'm using steer manure.
And Portland Garden Supply Southeast also has bags too.
Portland Garden Supply Southeast.
Isn't that right?
Stark?
Yeah, that big huge
Portland
yeah.
Portland
Nursery.
Portland
That's
Nursery,
it.
yeah.
I knew if I said it, somebody would know. They have this stuff.
Perfect.
Start.
I know where that is.
Oklahoma.
Start.
There's one on Stark and one on
There's a
Vision.
scoop thing right there.
Scooper.
The mixer.
I also need a second.
So say about 4 weeks.
So, here's what we're gonna do. So generally, you're gonna want a second tub to mix this in. I forgot to bring a second bucket, but we're gonna use this for pasteurization. Jason, where are our pillowcases?
Good question.
There we go. Got it. So, you're gonna want a pillowcase to pasteurize. Like I said before, the difference between pasteurization and sterilization is that pasteurization is at a lower temperature for a longer duration of time, and it saves a lot of really good bacteria that the mushroom really like. So instead of just killing everything, there's good microorganisms that will benefit the growth of your mycelium and your mushrooms.
Do the good bacteria, is it certain resistance levels of heat? Like, I guess a contaminant would die off at the
Yes.
higher level of heat, and then the beneficial bacteria
Can survive that.
Is the lower level of heat is okay for it, but that still won't contaminate, will it? Or,
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
So, step one is, actually I'll put this back because what you're gonna wanna take is you're gonna wanna soak your core first. So, get your big bag of core. They also sell bricks. Jason, if you could hold your brick. That's generally when it comes in if you're gonna buy it online.
Yeah, but
You
it's
put,
like,
so you put half the brick, usually if you're probably doing something this big, half the brick of cocoa core, and then you're gonna put boiling water inside it to break it up, because you're right, it's going to be a pain in the ass if it's in the brick form. So,
In the bag form, it's already broken up, I take it.
it's already broken up. Yeah, we're gonna take this.
I was like selling it.
And as you can see, it's already broken up. And what cocoa core is it's the husk of coconuts that is shredded and ground up. And what it does for our substrate, it doesn't have a lot of nutritional value at all, but it aerates the substrate so that our hyphae and hypha can can make their little maze and their pathways and help colonize. And also you have stuff that aerates the substrate. You get the more aeration, the bigger strands of hyphae, the stronger your mycelium is, and the more it can fend off contaminants. It's kind of cool to think like this little microscopic action movie going on in your monotub. So you'll want to take like I said, 1 part cocoa core, so it depends on how much you're about to make for how big of a tub you've got. Well, let's just say we're going to use 4 cups of cocoa core. So I'm going to take this bucket and fill 4 cups.
Those bags come any smaller?
Yeah. Unfortunately, this is the only size they have there, but they also have bricks there.
Okay.
You have to be careful with buying this stuff too, because sometimes it can be pre-treated with the exact thing you don't want your mushrooms to come in contact with, and that's called trichoderma. And the reason that is because sometimes this is used for people who like to grow certain flowers, and so it's an antifungal, but we're trying to grow fungus.
Yeah.
So just be very careful with what coir you do buy and other products as well.
Yeah.
Will it identify that it's been treated with that on the back? No, it's kind of like you gotta really just know the source.
Trichoderma, is that what?
Trichoderma is the green contaminant that I showed everyone in the jars. It's the most common one. You're all going to meet it someday. You're going to hate it. We all hate it.
Do you ever get fuzzy mold on things? Is it ever fuzzy? That sounds
White?
good. Fuzzy.
Right, but what color is it?
Gray. Very light gray.
Very light
But
gray.
not white.
I've never experienced it before.
I have, it's contaminant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's generally, if it doesn't look like the pretty mycelium I showed, it's a contaminant. Freak out, throw it away. You got your boiling water. Pretend this is boiling. Okay? So we're going to take it and we're going to pour some in our cocoa core. Just enough for it to cover the top. I'm sorry, I wish the bucket was see-through. It's not, clearly. We'll take this. And this is very important if you buy the brick, because the brick needs to break up. Okay, it has to be a nice consistency like that. Okay, but we don't want that much water. So this is steaming right now because the water is boiling, and you're gonna want to cover it up and let it soak up that hot water, and then you're gonna let it soak for an hour. And while that's soaking, you can create the other mixture that you're going to
You
need.
covered it, you said.
This is covered right now
Uh-huh.
with a lid or a towel or whatever you want to keep the steam in there to keep it hot.
And you're doing the cocoa first, right?
Cocoa first.
Okay.
Because in a separate container, we are now going to mix 2 parts poop, 1 part vermiculite.
And those go together.
Those go together, yeah. And so I would also just like to talk about the poop. If you're getting fresh poop, you got a source, you live near a farm, you have goats, your horse, your cows yourself, great, cool.
So you
But
can use goat poop.
sorry, I shouldn't have said goats. Technically, you could use any poop you want. You know, like I said, I mean, you could experiment so much with this.
Okay.
But cows and horses, yeah, they give the best nutrients. You could use your own poop if you want to, people. Get as gross as you want.
I'm thinking llamas too, because is it llama poop? They're supposed to be like pretty good. Anyway, go ahead, sorry.
Just the nitrogen.
You really want to
Yeah,
be careful
yeah.
with any kind of fresh horse poop, because.
So that's what I was gonna say. You don't want fresh.
Yeah, because
You
they're
want
gonna
it.
have wormers, and that takes
Yeah.
3 years to break down.
You want it to be kind of dry and you want it to break up. You don't want a whole lot of moisture in the poop, okay? It needs to be, dispersible, you know? I guess wet poop is anyways, but it's just ask Naomi's, get a bag of horse poop from Naomi's. It's probably gonna be a lot easier for you. I swear I'm not paid affiliate. But, so then you're gonna take your second container, okay? And in this container, I don't have a second container,
another bucket.
like I said, so I'm just gonna pour it directly into the bucket. But you won't want to do this because this is going to be steaming hot.
Yeah.
So you want this to cool down, and then you will take all of this and you'll pour it together in your monotub. Okay.
What about the pillowcase?
So the pillowcase, I'll get to next. So we have this, we're gonna take, where's my cup? So this is 4 cups. So now we're gonna do 4 and then 8. Okay, so I'm gonna do 4 cups of vermiculite. Another note on the vermiculite, you wanna make sure you get coarse grade vermiculite from the stores. Now this isn't as coarse as it even should be, but it's coarse enough.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not powder, it's definitely rocky, because it's the same thing as the core. You want it to be able to aerate your substrate. So take 4 cups from here.
Is that a volcanic substance?
I don't exactly know what vermiculite totally is, but it's vermiculite. It makes mushrooms grow.
Wait.
Okay.
That was 3.
Yeah, I'm doing 4. Wait.
They're each 2
You said
cups,
4.
right? That thing?
You said 4 and 4.
Yeah. So that was 3,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna do 1 more. Also, I just realized this is a 2 cup. Thank you all for not saying anything and saving me.
And your magical gloves.
And my magical gloves. And my second container that this is all being mixed up in.
Reality
Thank
is
you for
already
bearing
being
with me.
distorted.
When you did the-
We haven't even finished the part.
When you did the core, you put in your 4 cups of core, and then how much water went with that? Same amount?
So
Or
you're just gonna.
I just didn't hear that.
There's no exact measurement.
Okay.
You're just pouring in because we want something called field capacity, which is what I'm going to get to in just like 10 seconds when I add the rest of this. So now we're gonna put in our poop, and we're gonna put in 8 cups. We're technically putting in 16 because I have.
So sorry, the second container would be you mixing the vermiculite with the poop
Yes.
before you
Yes.
add it
Yes.
to the quark.
Okay.
Yes.
So they're in
And the
separate.
coir would be cooking
They're not using
or
it.
cooked.
I mean, I don't see why if you just waited for it to cool down, you couldn't do it like this. It's all going to enter the same container anyways.
Yeah.
So
It's just
take that.
what
you will.
When you say cool down, what do you mean by cool down? Like just like
Room temperature.
room temperature? Okay.
You're definitely going to want like a meat thermometer, you know, to be checking all these things. But it doesn't really matter for me right now because I'm not actually heating anything up. Okay. Okay. So, we got all this in here. You're going to want to mix it around. Yeah. And so the consistency that you want is going to be described with the term field capacity, which is what we're trying to replicate the moisture content of mediums in nature. Okay, so the way that you could tell is if you grab a handful of it, okay, and you squeeze it, you should get some mixture or some liquid that is coming out of your hands if you squeeze super, super hard, okay?
Yeah.
But there should be more than what I'm getting.
Like a
Okay.
forest
There should be
after a shower.
Yes. It should be a very small stream. So I'm going to take some more water.
Is this a hot water?
Yes.
No,
Or
at
at
this
least
at this
boil
point,
it.
It's cooled down.
No, at this point it's cooled down. So you're just adding water.
Like
And then
you did boil it before to kind of like
Yeah.
stir it.
Yeah. Or you could use distilled water from the store. It's all good.
Kind of like concrete.
Kind of like concrete,
You
yeah.
can only put so much in, you can't take it out.
Right. But this is the thing, though, is that you can take out moisture by adding either more core or more vermiculite. So if you add a little bit too much water and you're testing for your field capacity and it's like, you're like, oh shit, you just have to add more of the moisture control ingredients to the recipe. So, I'm probably going to have to, because now you can see
Oh, yeah.
decent
Oh.
stream.
That's it? Too much. That's what you want?
No. Let's just try again. Sorry. squeezing pretty hard. Yeah, too much of a stream. So now I have too much moisture in there. So I'm just going to take another 2 cups of vermiculite, and I'll mix that in, and then we should be good to go. Actually, I'll do cork. They do the same thing. We're mixing that in there. Jason, if you wouldn't mind getting me a napkin, some paper towels from over there. Thanks, man.
A side note while you're doing that, what's your thoughts on using a clear?
Also talk about lights. You could totally use a light, any grow light from any hydroponic store. All you want to make sure is that it emits blue lights. So a lot of fluorescent lights, they don't. So you want to make sure that when you're purchasing that, you're getting it from a buddy or whatever, that it emits blue light, because that is what promotes the growth of psilocybin in the mycelium.
Marijuana grow lights are great.
Yeah, marijuana grow lights are great, and they're inexpensive in Oregon now, so just use those. I shouldn't have done that. I still have to test. Okay, so we're going to test again here. So I've got it. Squeezing hard. And after squeezing hard, we're getting a decent stream. So I'm going to say that this is ready to go. Okay, yeah.
Respecting this as your formula.
Sure.
I really like the idea of going to Starbucks and getting these big bags of grounds that they just give away for free.
Totally.
What would you substitute for of those 3 ingredients if you had?
You don't even have to substitute. Just add it in.
So it'll be added in.
I would try it as a substitute for the rye.
For the rye?
What?
Oh wait.
Coffee grounds?
Coffee
for the
grounds.
mycelium?
I thought you just.
That does work, but he's asking for the substrate.
Oh, I'm just confused then.
Yeah. Would you substitute for the cocoa core, or
so
for the
what
food?
coffee grounds does is it introduces nitrogen, I believe. But I have a trash can.
Or the vermiculite.
Put it in there.
I would put it in an addition.
Fertilizer, nutrients.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go over the additives right now, so that you can all take notes
No
on.
substitution, just add it. Okay.
Yeah, there's generally not substitutes to these. You can take them out, but basically it's just nutrients for your mycelium, moisture control.
Gotcha.
And then you can add all different types of ingredients, and I'm going to start going through them now. So we got, as he mentioned, coffee grounds. You can make some new connections with your local Starbucks. They know what's up.
Yeah.
And then you have gypsum.
What does
And you
gypsum
have-
do? Does anyone know?
I'm going to go over these.
Oh, okay,
Jason.
cool.
That's my list.
You have worm castings, or poop. I don't know why they have to make the word poop so complicated sometimes.
How far can you cast it?
It's 4:45 also, Evan, just
Yeah?
FYI. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we're gonna wrap up pretty quickly here. I'm sorry if anyone has to leave exactly at 5. So worm castings is an organic fertilizer. After the worms have broken down organic matter, this is what remains. Has a high saturation of nutrients as well as low level of contaminants. And people usually add between 5 and 15%. I'm going to put nutrient plus. And so gypsum, great mineral additive, and is useful in a variety of growing stages. They use it at 5%. And I'm going to put it as, like I said, another nutrient / mineral plus. Coffee grounds. Yeah. So coffee grounds release nitrogen. And so I will say, I've experimented with all these, haven't seen huge differences. So experiment with it how you'd like. Maybe it does affect a lot for you, but that's just my personal experience. I haven't had all that grade of results that have changed. Like, this hasn't changed the world for me. So I'll be quick here going through the rest of it. So now you have this mixture, okay? You're going to take the pillowcase.
Does it have to be a new pillowcase?
It has to be, you know, well, it doesn't actually, because we're about to pasteurize, so the pillowcase will be pasteurized as well. So I'm just going to do it over the pressure cooker just because I don't want to get any water on their carpet. I want the Sage Center to continue to let us have mushroom workshops here. So I'm going to empty out. Got it? Okay. So there's some left in the bucket, but this is fine for now. So now we have this pillowcase full of the substrate using our recipe. Okay? So as you can see, it's getting pretty wet. It's going to start dripping. Okay? Now this is another way, or a good way to maintain field capacity. You want this to drip out. I have a pull-up bar in my kitchen doorway, and what I do is I take it, I tie it up there, and then I put the bucket underneath, and it will drip out to exactly field capacity, which is pretty sweet. If you don't want to rely on the fist method, it will drip out to exactly what you need. But it's pretty close right now, and just because of time, we're going to say it's field capacity, and it's good to go. Okay?
How long usually does it take to drip out?
I just leave it overnight.
Overnight?
Overnight should do just fine. It'll be ready to go by the morning. So, next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to take, doesn't have to be micropore tape. I mean, you could use any tape you need. Sterileness probably isn't too big of an issue at this point. But we're going to tape up our bag to the walls. It's not super necessary, but it's easier as you're pouring in all of this substrate just for it to stay nice.
Oh, okay.
And just to kind of run through what we have so far, we have jars that are fully colonized. We have substrate that's prepared at this recipe that's at field capacity in our pillowcase. And I'm sorry, I also didn't go over pasteurization, so I'll go over that now. You take this, you put it in a giant pot, okay, because this isn't sterile yet. It has to be sterilized to use with your mushrooms.
In the bag?
In the pillowcase. And make sure that you have those mason jar rings or a cake pan at the bottom so that it's not, it's not like baking, you know, and it's going to melt at the bottom. So you want something there to protect it. You want the water to rise over the bag. Tie the bag off, and then you want the water to rise over it. Unlike our jars that we only want a quarter or a half inch, you want the water to be over it, and then you want it to be at 170 degrees for 1 hour.
I hope you write that down.
And these are the jars? What are we pasteurizing right now?
What's that? Sorry.
The bag of poop.
The bag of poop.
It's
Yeah.
being pasteurized.
Yeah, and it's not in the pressure cooker, it's just in a pot. You could use the pressure cooker just with the lid off.
It's just gonna have a very good aroma to it.
Before you let it have to be drip?
No, it doesn't.
It has to be.
So it's after. No, it's before. It's before. Yeah, you're gonna pasteurize it, and then you're gonna let it drip to field capacity.
Sweet.
Yeah.
170 degrees.
Okay. So.
Can we review that one more time? So
Yeah.
You've got the pillowcase full of substrate. You pasteurize it by putting it in a pot.
Yes.
Filling it with water.
Yes.
So it's going to be pretty saturated in the pillowcase.
Yes.
And you're going to have to hang it, let it drip.
You're gonna have to hang it. Yeah, you're gonna have to hang it.
Hang it again.
It's actually the first time you're hanging it. Yes, I was. Apologize for that.
Okay, now I got it.
Okay. Shit, my bad. So we made that, put it in the pillowcase, popped it in our pot that's on our stove. We got it to, I didn't even write the shit down. 170 for 1 hour. Cool overnight. As it's dripping, it will get to room temperature. And then it is ready to go.
But that's not in the pressure cooker, right?
No, it's just on your stove. You don't want it to be sterilized. You want it to be pasteurized.
Okay.
So now we have I'm gonna get this.
So sorry, the squeeze test for field capacity is not really.
It's not relevant. No,
Okay,
I shouldn't
okay.
have. I shouldn't have
Got it.
showed that at that point because then we're just pasteurizing it. So I apologize. Delete that from your memory.
The jury did not hear this last question.
Yes, did not hear it. I don't know what any of you are talking about. I'm an expert mushroom cultivator.
No, you're a researcher, lab
Right.
researcher.
Yeah. I'm an experimenter. So we've got our garbage bag taped up. It's not taped up. I mean, you should probably be neater than this. What we're gonna do now is we have.
You said that the tape didn't have to be sterilized, yet that container is sterile and your bag is fresh, clean out of the box.
I mean, tape. It's just like there's not going to be a whole lot of bacteria in between. You know, the tape. It's fine. No one's ever really had much issues with tape. So now we have, and this is the one that hasn't been inoculated yet.
It says G2G at the top.
Yeah, that one is. That's good. I'm not going to use that one.
Oh, I see.
This is for the example. So we're pretending that this is fully colonized. This is white, fluffy, beautiful mycelium that we're confident in. It's survived the contaminants. It's ready to go. It's good to go.
Looks closer to that.
It looks way closer to that. Thank you again. This is what it looks like. And so we're taking this and we're going to hit it on the bicycle tire or break it up one more time. And then it'll turn into this, probably whiter than this since it came back and went to 100%. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to take our substrate and we're going to make a layer at the very bottom in our garbage bag. So we're going to pour that all around the bottom like so. And you're probably going to want either an inch, yeah, around an inch is probably a good idea. And you're going to want to flatten that out, mix it up around.
So you're making a forest floor.
A forest floor, yes. And then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take your grain and not the whole thing.
How thick is that?
How thick? About an inch. And so I know y'all can't see, but that's going to ruin it. It's about an inch, about right there. Okay? So we still have a lot of bag left to go. So we're going to take our grain that is colonized. We just shook it up, and we're just going to shake it around so that seeds are just being sprinkled all over the place. Okay?
Not the whole thing.
Not the whole thing. It has to have that much. We're going to do another layer. And you are going to repeat this process until you have no substrate left. And you have layers of colonized grain in between the substrate.
The lasagna method.
The lasagna method.
It almost looked like when you were sprinkling, it could have been like a couple tablespoons of the
Lasagna.
the
It's more than
inoculated.
that.
Colonized.
The
Yeah, yeah.
colonized grain.
Yeah.
Yeah, colonized grain.
But the white colonized grain looked like it was all stuck together. It's not. It's not
So-
as separate as that, is it?
When you shake it up,
It will separate itself.
Yeah, it will
Cool.
disperse and it will look more like this, but it'll have like a white coating on each grain. You're basically just ripping the hyphae
Yeah,
apart, but it will come back so quickly, especially now that we're introducing it to all these nutrients. So, bunch of seed, putting a bunch in there now, and then we'll put the rest.
How many layers do you usually end up with?
Oh, yeah, it's good.
It's just as much substrate as you have, and then you'll pack it down.
I see where these go.
Keep it below the holes. Keep it below the holes.
Perfect.
We're packed. We have this beautiful bed of substrate and grain. You'll take a knife and I usually just cut and make sure that we have, I mean, you could tuck it too. I'm not going to bother cutting it right now, but just neat formation. And then now that you have this, I'm just going to walk around and just kind of show people what we're looking at in there.
What's the expected yield?
Expected yield, it depends on strains. It depends on a whole lot. I'm gonna bring the flashlight around.
You could get a quarter-pound dried off one good flush.
Yeah. Probably as far as I'll go. I'll come back around that way.
The bag laying on it, that was the purpose of cutting.
Yes.
I think less. Yeah, I think 3
Use a knife to cut it.
I think like 3 or 4 inches.
I'm just trying to, you know what I mean? Layers.
Everywhere, because there are colonized grains dispersed throughout our substrate. So you're going to start to see these explosions of mycelium all around your bed. It's going to look so cool. And the cool thing about the monotub is that this doubles as the incubation chamber. So this we're watching it colonize, and then we're fruiting straight from that. There's not another process after this. We let it get colonized, so the hyphae are spread throughout it, so it'll look like a spider web has just been weaved in around our substrate. And then what we're going to do is we're going to, introduce it to natural light, and then that's it. It should start pinning, and then when it begins to pin, the pins will look like this little guy that I've drawn here, little brown blip, and then eventually it will look like that, the picture that John is. Well, if you could turn it around, John.
You call it pinning, like
Pinning.
P-I-N-N.
Right. So I'll go through the time duration here. After we make this, it is. It's such an amazing feeling of success when you see that you have done it. It's worked. You didn't contaminate the entire process too many times before you got to this part. I encourage you not to give up when it happens the first time. I almost guarantee it's going to happen.
So we're going to put a lid on that, on this.
Yes.
Oh, God.
I didn't bring a lid. I'm so sorry.
It's no problem at all. Yeah. So when we do this and we're done, we're putting the lid on it and we're putting it away and we're treating it the way that we treated our grain before, like right after we inoculated it. Remember, we put it away and it was 75 degrees and we didn't touch it. We kind of checked on it a little bit. Now we're just doing that on a mass scale with our monotub. So, checking on.
So we're still going to the same temperature then, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Same temperature from the colonization period as before with the grain jars. And now we're seeing that it should take about 1 to 2 weeks. 1 to 2 weeks from this point for the whole tub to be colonized. It could take quicker. It could take longer.
Temperature.
Temperature 75 degrees.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, if you get into that 69 degrees,
Yeah.
it takes longer.
It takes,
so
way
you
longer.
really want to have the temperature in that window.
Totally. If you're closer to 80, it'll be even more rapid, but be careful about going too hot because
Yes,
it
too
throws
hot.
contaminants, and also it could, it won't fry anything, but
It stops it. It
Yeah.
happened to me.
yeah.
This is not in the
72, 79,
dark.
those are your numbers.
Said
Yeah.
introduce light. You said introduce light, so this whole thing is not in the dark anymore. We're
It
keeping
is in the dark
it's
while it's colonizing. And then once we see, like I described, the spider web that's colonized fully around it, then we will take it and introduce it to the light.
And while
You
it's
can-
colonizing, you have it in a plastic bag too, right?
Like I said before, right after we do this and I put the lid on it, I usually go as far as to take another black plastic bag and wrap it up, just in case I open up the closet and more light comes in. Because the blue light and the natural light is what triggers the pinning. And you don't want that to start happening if it's not colonized yet. You're going to waste the whole tub.
Okay, so this.
How often do you check?
I check daily.
Check. Okay.
Yeah. You don't
You
have
never
to.
take the lid off.
No. Until
Until you're ready to harvest.
Until you're ready to harvest and it's ready to go and you harvest
So
it.
when you expose it to light, do you take the lid off? Or do you leave it
When
on?
I expose it to light,
Yeah.
I
After the
I
pinning.
leave, if it's a clear lid, which mine is, I leave the lid on.
Okay.
The light can go right through the clear tote and it'll activate mycelium and start to pin it. I also want to talk a little bit about harvesting. So we'll have this tub, okay, and this is our garbage bag. They'll start to pop up and they'll look like this first. Okay, almost like a penis.
Yep.
And
Penis
envy. And then we'll see a few that start popping up. You want to get them right there. Those are your perfect mushrooms.
Oh, we-
Because when they open up, I know they look cool, but now we're back to the life cycle. Sporulating is occurring, and it's getting all over your other mushrooms, and now your mushrooms are turning different colors because there's a bunch of spores on them, and the caps are getting gross. Yeah.
I always heard that the veil is supposed to break.
The veil's not supposed to break. You want it right before. So what she's
Good to
referring
know.
to, there's a little veil that's left after it pops, but right now the veil is encompassing the cap and attaching it to the stem. And when it can fruit, the veil will break and then the thing will go. And it's beautiful, but it's not where you want it. And also, you do lose potency of psilocybin when the cap opens.
When you're doing a big bin like this, though, when you come to harvest, you're gonna have all styles.
You're gonna have all of them, but it's good to measure that when you see a couple start to do this, it's time to go.
Yeah.
Because when a couple start, it's a matter of hours until they
don't go
all.
overnight. No, I'll get in the morning.
Yeah, don't. You don't wait. You don't want to waste time. And I guarantee you're going to be tingling with so much excitement. You're not going to want to wait anyways. You're going to want to harvest all of them, and it's going to be awesome. Before I answer any more questions, I also want to keep going on this. You're going to get a lot of the little pins that are going to be everywhere. They're going to be at the base of the big mushrooms. They're going to look like this. Okay, they're just barely coming up. Okay, and those are very rich in psilocybin. So and psilocin. So you want to get all of those. They're also called aborts because they don't really grow anymore. So pick all of those because you don't want to waste them. I mean, you could trip off of a tiny handful of them. And also when you flush, which is what I was talking about, you're going to take our big pan of substrate and you are going to take it out with the bags, maybe put it in another box. I just have a separate box that I do, and then I soak it. And you want to soak it overnight in distilled water, and then you want to let it dry out, take it out, and then put it back in the box, and then you will get a second flush. You will get a second flush if you just harvest it and wait. But a note about the primordia, about the pins, the aborts, is that if you try to flush and soak and you haven't picked all of them, they are going to get full of water and then they're going to get moldy and it's going to contam everywhere. So you want to make sure you rip all that off. The mycelium will be fine, but the fleshy matter of mushrooms will decompose and get contaminated and it will be gross.
So you don't cut them off at the stem, you just pull them all out.
So you want to take your thumb and your index finger, and you want to grab at the stem and just kind of wiggle it until it pops clean. That's what you want to do. You could also take a knife, but like I said, you're going to have a lot of matter that's left over, and they will pop off fairly easily. The pins too. Just okay.
Everything with this method is harvested at once. There's no selective harvesting.
You could, but I don't recommend it. You want to harvest it all at once,
Okay.
and then you'll get the second flush, and then you'll keep going. Like I said, 3 or 4 is a good place to stop as far as flushing goes.
One last thing, when you said about for the next flush, could you explain about the water? Once you pick everything out of there, you put water in the tub again? I'm not.
You want to soak the mycelium, and like I
Yes.
said, it will be like this. It will be together, and you can take it out, but you generally don't want to put it back in the same one and then dump it because then you'll have to dump the water out of it. So I just filled it up with a little bit of water, and then I take it out. Let the water run off of it. It will be rehydrated, and then you put it back in where the garbage bag was, and it will just keep going. Reintroduce it to natural
And
light.
it's rehydrated like
a brick or a
like
cake.
a cake.
Like a cake.
And then, but doesn't the cake just start to? As you try to put it back in the?
No, the mycelium will hold it together. I mean, look, it's
I see.
material.
That's true. Okay.
it is
Okay.
strong, and that's why we use grain. That's why we use cocoa core. That's why we use vermiculite, because it allows those pathways to be open for that mycelium to come through and expand and strengthen the whole body.
So you sterilize the water, boil the water before you...
I just use distilled water. Just go to the store and get a couple gallons of distilled water. It's sterilized.
I don't quite understand that now. You grab a hold of the black plastic and you lift it out, and then you set it in water?
Yeah.
And then you let
Use
it
a tub of the same size,
Yeah.
put it in there, fill it up so it goes a little bit above, let it soak overnight is usually what I do. Take it out in the morning.
And just drain off most of the water and then put it back?
Yeah, you don't have to like hang it or anything
Okay.
like that. Just like
What are you doing with the black plastic bag?
you just leave it. I leave it in the tub. I shake it up. I like pinch it so that I can lift it off, and then I dunk it.
One quick question. So how do you dry your mushrooms?
So drying mushrooms is a good point. That's the last thing we have to go over. I usually use sushi mats, sushi rolling mats. They're made of bamboo, and they have space in between them that allows an airflow to happen. You could also just put them in a different box. Silica gel packets, you can get them from the store for super cheap. They
Like
extract.
Maya's just over there. Sushi rollers right over there.
Oh, perfect. There you go.
What was the question? Was it that the
How do we
dried
dry?
ones are stronger?
The dried ones aren't stronger.
Oh, they're not?
They're not.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Wet ones are stronger.
Oh,
If you
baby, your after cake's the best thing.
Yeah, if you
Really?
have the opportunity to just eat them right after you harvest, go for it. But I just want to say this is important. It's the Monotub. Like I said, if you do this and you execute it correctly, you're probably going to have about a half pound of mushrooms on your hands, which is a fucking ridiculous amount of mushrooms.
Dried or fresh?
Dried. So that's a lot. So give them away to your friends. Do not sell them, okay? I'm not here to turn people into drug dealers. And there is no middle ground in between drug dealers and not drug dealers. It's like you take one step and boom, you're a drug dealer. And you, I mean, like I said before in the beginning, we're a community at the Portland Psychedelic Society. There's 4,000 members strong. There's only about 50 of us here. Share. City's 700,000 people
idea.
wide.